SMU looks to get to 2-0 in ACC play on Saturday at 11 a.m. Central when the Mustangs host Stanford in Ford Stadium. I'm Embody Hayden Howerton with me on this edition of the On the Pony Express podcast to preview the game and look to see what the Mustangs have to do to get that second win in ACC play. We look ahead at that and more on this edition of the podcast, which starts right now.
When you clock in every day, there's always that chance that something can happen. You don't know when, where, or how, but accidents are inevitable. As a business owner, you don't want to be left holding the bag whether something happens to an employee or customer. General liability insurance covers everything from a slip or fall all the way down to a paper cut. At Northwest Insurance Agency, we will get you any necessary coverage that pertains to your field. So get covered under the sombrero by calling 855-88-75656 or visit us at nwagencies.com.
This is the On the Pony Express podcast, part of the On3 network. Check out all the SMU coverage you need at ontheponyexpress.com. Now, here's your host, Billy Embody.
1, 2, 3, let me go.
Happy Thursday. It is preview day at ontheponyexpress.com. And I say welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. I'm Billy Embody, Hayden Howerton, former SMU offensive lineman. On the screen there with me, if you're watching on our YouTube channel, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button for us. We appreciate all of you who have already done that. Hayden, about half the people don't subscribe to the channel, but watch the shows. So hit that subscribe button today and reach out to our friend Mark Villasana, 214-352-5656. He'll get you hooked up with his advice on your insurance coverage, rates, and more. Northwest Insurance Agency, nwagencies.com. I advise everybody to maybe think twice before you wear black on Saturday because it's going to be nice and toasty out there as SMU looks to beat Stanford for the second straight year.
I need to hydrate up before you come to Ford Stadium on Saturday. Hydration may be left up to your personal choice of drink, but either way, 11 a.m. kick for the Mustangs, and something to watch out for. SMU is 0-2 at 11 a.m. so far this year. Both of our losses have come in that 11 a.m. slot. Personally, as a player, I loved playing at 11. Get up and go. You have your pasta at 6 a.m. in the pregame meal, and you just get to get on the bus and go to the stadium. But for those of you who aren't making the trip,
Alfredo or marinara?
No, I went marinara, no meat sauce in the morning.
Okay.
6 a.m. was a little early for meat sauce, but I did have
hands
some.
Already thick enough. Yeah.
I did have some pasta and some chicken is how I would make my pregame meals. But it is on the CW for those who won't end up making the trip. Maybe some of you out-of-towners. Maybe you guys are going to be like me and you got to be in Houston on Friday night. I'm going to be missing out on some of the Friday night festivities. Yeah. We do have a state championship reunion for my 10-year anniversary, state champions. So it'll be cool to see all the guys. If any of them are in here listening to this, can't wait to see you guys. But SMU up to this point, they're 3-2 so far, but all that matters is they're 1-0 in the ACC. You have that 31-18 win against Syracuse under your belt, and the season hasn't been overly inspiring thus far, but I think this is a good opportunity for this SMU team to continue to build confidence in themselves, continue to show that they're the team we thought they were before the season, and you just had a couple of hiccups on the way to your current point. I do think this Stanford Cardinal team, while they get in the ACC, they're one of our brothers, they're one of our eternal rivals, as the ACC has decided, as we'll play them every single year. They are a program that kind of continues to struggle on the gridiron, and it starts with their mascot, the big ugly tree, for the Cardinal. That is singular, not plural. But we'll get into the history, Billy. But before we get to all of that, what are your initial thoughts of how SMU comes out of the gate on Saturday?
I think at this point it's tough to predict anything else than, I don't know. This team, you have no idea what this team is going to do. Are they going to get back to when they started? I think they started okay against East Texas A&M, and then they started great against Baylor, go out to a 10-0 lead. And then the next two games, they don't start well. They fall behind 10-0 to two teams of very different calibers. And then against Syracuse, 3-and-out, shank punt, goal line stand. And then, they were kind of off to the races then. But what version of SMU are we going to see on Saturday? I have no idea what to expect from this team. I am trying my best to try to diagnose what this team is each week versus almost how things are going to play out. Like, that is where I'm at with this team. Last year, it was, okay, they'll probably start fast. They'll probably jump out to a lead. They'll probably ride the defense playing, safe, fundamental football with keeping everything in front of you. And, against the good teams, it'll probably be competitive, but really SMU's too talented and they'll kind of have the boa constrictor setup going and just choke them out. This year, no clue how things happen. I do think this is a team that is offensively very gifted and can be explosive at any point. And they've also kind of had their woes every now and again. And then defensively, we're maybe starting to see a little bit of a turn here, but statistically, they're still one of, the worst defenses in the country.
Yeah, it's hard to win in college football. I say that every week, but I think this year's SMU team is just going to be one of those that you kind of just have to grind out every win that you're going to get. You're going to have to scratch and claw your way to victory rather than these, 31-3 wins that I think we got a little too accustomed to over the last couple of years in conference. I just think the ACC in itself is very deep this year. And I just think from a talent perspective, do we have the talent to win in this league? Yes. I just think we have a young football team where it's hard to tell what's going to happen. But we'll get to predictions later in this show. I do want to give some of the history of the Stanford Cardinal, as I do every preview week. Early roots of their football program go all the way back to 1891. They did drop football for rugby in 1906. They bring football back to the gridiron in 1917. They've been a part of only a couple of conferences that have run under a bunch of different names, but they were members of the Pacific Coast Conference until 1958 when they joined the AAUU, which became the Pac-8, and then the Pac-10, and then finally the Pac-12 before jumping to the ACC with SMU prior to the 2024 season. They do have 2 national championships. They have a 1926 and a 1940 national championship, just more recent than Texas A&M and TCU. They have 16 conference championships and 1 Heisman winner, Mr. Jim Plunkett, in 1970. And when I read that, I was surprised because obviously I knew McCaffrey didn't win the Heisman, but I just wanted to see where he came in the voting. Christian McCaffrey finished second behind Derrick Henry in 2015. He did earn AP Player of the Year that year over Derrick Henry, but did not walk home with the Heisman. Interim head coach Frank Reich. He is the former Indianapolis Colts head coach. He was hired by general manager Andrew Luck, who's now in charge of the program. This will be Reich's only season. Andrew Luck has come out and said that as he's pursuing other head coaching candidates. But for now, he leans on the guy that was his head coach. Famous alum for the Cardinal. You have your football alum. You've got number 1 draft pick Andrew Luck, now at the helm. You have Ed and Christian McCaffrey. You've got Richard Sherman. You've got Cowboys legend Tony Hill. 9-time Pro Bowl DB John Lynch.
And Super Bowl champion John Lynch, Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
And Super Bowl champion John Lynch. That's 2004 Hall of Famer quarterback John Elway. And then in business and different market sectors, guys, I was looking it up. There's way too many to count. I mean, Stanford, you name it, they've got it somewhere. They've got astronauts, they've got politicians. So
Condi, friend of the program, Condi.
Yep. I will say maybe she can get us into Augusta.
Yeah. Oh man, that'd be nice. I don't think we'll be allowed to record the pod there.
Probably.
So we'll have to turn it down naturally.
Recent history of the program. They went 3-9 last year in 2024, leading to Frank Reich's tenure as head coach. They're 2-3 in 2025 so far, with losses to Hawaii in week 1, BYU, and Virginia. And then they do have victories against Boston College. So they do have a win in the ACC so far. They're 1-1. And then their other win was last week against San Jose State, which San Jose State's, they're not bad. So
yeah, they're good G5 for sure.
Yep. So they put on some good games so far this year. This is the 3rd meeting all time between SMU and Stanford. You had the 1935 Rose Bowl, which went Stanford's way 7-0. And then you have 2024 when we took the trip to Palo Alto and the 40-10 victory where pretty much everything went SMU's way last year. This will be the first home game of this series. Looking forward to Stanford making their first trip to Ford Stadium.
And of course, whenever Stanford rolls into SMU, it's obviously a reminder to think about that other game that SMU plays against a California team, and that is Cal. And that is why Status Jet can help get you there Thanksgiving weekend. Make sure you dial them up, Go to statusjet.com for more information. You can fill out a form. You can get their phone number. You can do all of those things, do the research to see what jet you want to jump into for your next family vacation or game day trip. Statusjet.com. Make sure you mention on the Pony Express and get a discount on a round trip flight with our friends at StatusJet. So statusjet.com. And also want to remind you guys about our friends at Thomas Auto Group as well. Make sure you head up 75 in McKinney and not only look at a new or pre-owned vehicle, schedule service there. Learn about the Thomas Promise. Learn about all of the things that they do to make that experience unique for you and see what they can do for you when it comes to putting you in a new vehicle or servicing your old. So make sure you mention on the Pony Express and you get employee pricing on new and pre-owned vehicles with the Thomas Auto Group.
At Thomas Auto Group, the Thomas Promise includes the low price promise,
the pre-owned promise,
and the 72-hour exchange promise.
and finally, the 100% customer satisfaction promise. So shop Thomas Auto Group today, home of the Thomas Promise.
All right, let's get into this. The Stanford team, very different after Troy Taylor's departure, but Andrew Luck has kind of been that steadying voice, kind of really settling the waters. And it starts with Frank Reich, but this offense is really one that shouldn't really scare SMU fans, except for the fact that SMU's defense, of course, is what it is.
Hey, Andrew Luck's a Houston guy just like me, so I got to respect him in that regard. But OC play caller, tight end coach Nate Byam is the Andrew Luck director of offense, and that did have the title before Andrew Luck took over the program. But Frank Reich does share play calling duties with Coach Byam. Scheme, this is more of a pro-style offense. I mean, you get Coach Reich, who's in the NFL for such a long time, played quarterback in the NFL, and he's really kind of putting his stamp of, we're going to run things more like an NFL franchise than a college team, and just see where the cards fall with a team that has frankly struggled offensively in years past with Troy Taylor and previously. They did have Eric Ayamanor, who's on my fantasy team, but other than that, did not have a lot of spark on this offense last year. 111th total offense coming into this game, 329 yards per game. SMU is the 121st total defense so far this year. And look, when I was looking at the stats, I'm having to compare with other teams. Our yards per play is lower than those around us in the 100 and down. But it's just a result of SMU not being able to get off the field in those first four games. Scoring offense for Stanford, they're 109th. They're averaging about 20.6 points per game. Passing is their strong suit. They're 64th, which strong suit has to be in air quotes there. 233.4 yards per game. Rushing, they're one of the bottom teams in the country at 124th, and they've given up 14 sacks so far this year. Talk about their impact players. Number 15 quarterback, Ben Gulbranson, 6'3", 220 senior. He's improved every week. In that week one loss versus Hawaii, I think he looked pretty rough around the edges, to put it lightly. But he did throw for over 400 last week against San Jose State. He threw for 286 against Virginia the week before. He's improved every game so far. He's not very mobile. He only has one game with positive rushing yards and has negative 100 rushing yards so far this year. Pair that with wide receiver Bryce Farrell, 5'10", 175. He averages over 100 yards a game versus ACC opponents. He had 130 and a touchdown against UVA, and then he had about 70 against Boston College. And then their other receiving threat, tight end Sam Roush, 6'5", 260, only 10 receptions, 2 touchdowns. He does take the top off the defense a little bit. He took an intermediate pass 37 yards after the catch for a touchdown earlier this year. So he's got some speed if you slip a tackle, and it's something that you're going to have to watch for with the secondary that needs to improve tackling-wise every week, but this is a big opportunity for them to prove it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think for me, this is the game that, you don't like with Syracuse's offense. They presented some issues. They presented some challenges with their wide receiver core. And yes, Stanford has some nice pieces to the puzzle. Don't get me wrong, but this is a pro style attack. This is one that you really feel like this is your get right moment for the secondary, if there's going to be one on the schedule. And then who knows what happens against Clemson and then, Wake and beyond that. But if you're looking to build confidence, this is it. And so they really need to show up, or else you're going to want to spend the entire rest of Saturday at Manny's. And you might as well do it anyway, because October is a great month to support our friends at Manny's Tex-Mex. You can check out some of their incredible food, but also being able to sip for a good cause. And that is right. The Komen Rita, $1 of every Komen Rita this month of October goes to the Susan G. Komen Foundation for Breast Cancer Research. Great foundation, obviously, and you can enjoy it with some great food at Manny's Tex-Mex, 4 locations across DFW. And on top of that, make sure you say queso queso to your server and get 10% off your food at Manny's Tex-Mex. Again, 4 locations across DFW. Great time, great place, great patio, and it's the perfect spot to end really your game day for SMU, whether you're right down the road in the Lakewood area or heading up to Plano or heading out to Rockwall or Saxe, that kind of area. You can enjoy it at Manny's. Enjoy those night games over there. So do that, and also ask for Socorro when they make your margaritas as well. So appreciate our friends at Socorro for supporting us. It'll be out there on the boulevard and maybe for some reverse boulevarding as well on Saturday. So Hayden, this defense, though, I asked Brett Lashley about it during the week. It's a good front that SMU is going to face this week against Stanford. Very different than last year.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to run the ball this year, where I think last year SMU kind of just got off the plane and everything went their way. I think we're going to have a little bit more of a challenge from this Cardinal defensive front. This is a 3-4, more pro-style front where you get some of the big bodies that are able to kind of eat up some gaps and a lot of linebackers just to play ball. This defense is led by both linebacking coaches, Andy Thompson and Bobby April. They're co-DCs. One coaches the inside backers, one coaches the outside. Total defense, statistically, they're 119th. They're averaging a bunch of yards, especially through the air. Second worst in the nation of passing defense. I won't remind you guys who number 1 is, but they're on my hat. Scoring defense, 103rd in the country, 29.4 points per game allowed. And they've given up 2 sacks per game, so 10 so far the year. And then a -1 team turnover margin. So not terrible, definitely bottom half for most statistics, but rushing wise, I think they do a really nice job of plugging gaps, playing long. They're well coached in the trenches for sure. Just on the back end is where SMU is going to be able to take advantage. But let's talk about some of their impact players. You got sack leader, their leader of their front, number 91, Clay Patterson. He's a defensive lineman. He's from Frisco, 6'3", 280. He does a really nice job of just buckboarding the offensive lineman, where he's coming straight out of his stance, his arms fully extended, and snapping the O-line's head back, and he's able to just read and react off of that. He's not overly explosive from a tackling perspective. I don't think he gets off blocks very well. He only has 11 tackles so far on the year. He didn't have any against San Jose State, which I thought was interesting, but I don't find any evidence that he's hurt. I looked at his PFF. He played his usual snap count. So could be something to watch of maybe he's limited going into this game. But you pair him with linebacker number 35, Matt Rose. Tackle leader for the Cardinal, 6'2", 225 from Brecksville, Ohio. Seems like a ton of linebackers come out of Ohio. You got Vrabel and guys like that. But he's going into his senior season, 40 tackles so far in the year. He's an instinctual linebacker. And then I think he does a pretty nice job in coverage as well. He's not giving up much. I think he's only given up 4 receptions, maybe 5 so far on the year. So he's got some length. He uses his arms well, and could be something that if RJ Maryland or Matthew Hibner get matched up on him, could be a matchup to watch out in the pass game.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think, we see this SMU offense get the tight ends involved, and then they kind of disappear, and then get the tight ends involved and disappear. The fun thing now about this SMU offense, when you look at opposing defenses and how they defend them, one, what does the offensive line look like this week? As far as who's actually out there, where they're playing, all of those things. That's something that we're going to watch really closely, and is a developing storyline as far as how nicked up is PJ. Do they really if SMU, if there was a time when SMU needed to kind of jump all over a team and be able to say, okay, playing way from ahead, let's get PJ out of there, let's get Logan Parr out of there, let's kind of be able to do some of those key things when it comes to getting guys rest. This is probably the game, because you do have a road trip at Clemson next week, and that is going to be a really tall task for this offensive line, even though Clemson isn't what everybody expected Clemson to be this year. They still have a lot of talent. You're going to want this offensive line as healthy as possible. And so with that, the skill position players, who do you defend with all of that influx and changes up front on the offensive line? It doesn't really matter, because if you defend the tight ends and take those away, you've got Jordan Hudson, you've got Romello Brinson, you've got Yamir Knight who's coming on, and then you also have TJ Harden who can run the rock pretty well. Last week was an adventure at times, but this has usually been a run game this year that has been at least reliable. So that's kind of one of the things that I'm watching is what do we see out of this offense? Because really, this is, and we've said this now for a few weeks now, this is when you'd like to see a very, very clean game. I think Rhett Lashley kind of admitted what most people that don't expect perfection, like people aren't perfect, that's kind of the reality. But he was asked about just Kevin Jennings overall, and he said, you're going to have two or three plays that you're going to want back, the sack, the interception. Now it's making sure you mitigate how those plays you want back are done. Are they like last year against Clemson when they're early on? Are they like last year against Penn State when they're early on? Or are they like Syracuse last week when the game was generally at hand? Are they like last year at Virginia where the game was generally at hand? That matters when evaluating the overall performance and how Kevin Jennings does. But man, you'd love to see him play turnover free this week.
It's going to be all about controlling what you can control this week. And is Stanford a opponent that SMU should beat? Absolutely. But you can never just count on out-athleting anybody in this conference. So we'll get to my keys to the ball game. I think I'm going to keep it pretty simple for this week. And a lot of this is just going to be control what SMU can. And so the first key I've got is you got to jump on Stanford early. Last year, you score a touchdown on the first play from scrimmage, and it was pretty much over. It took all the wind out of Stanford's sails. I don't know if they'll give up that easily, but I'm going to say you got to score first on Saturday. And I don't know if Red will take the ball if we win the toss, but I probably would in a game like this. He loves the offense. He wants the offense to go score, so I'm sure he will. But UCLA got Penn State last week because it turned into a dogfight. Penn State kind of waltzed in feeling too good for the game, and ultimately it ended up beating them. So you pair that, my second key to the game, and before you guys, shout O-line bias in the comments, you got to run the ball. This is a talented front that is going to make SMU one-dimensional if you don't commit to the run game. So I'm going to say 35 carries for 160 plus gets it done. And I don't care who's out there. I don't care if you have to roll Chambly, if you have to roll PJ, and keep guys healthy and get some of these younger guys in. Maybe you get Abel Hoopy in. Maybe you get Savion some more reps, get him some confidence under his belt. Maybe you get some of these other freshman guys in there who we're going to need, like Dramad, later in this season, and just get him some reps. I think Hoopy's only played in a couple games, unless he's playing more on field goal than I'm realizing. You only have a couple snaps in one game, and then Dramad plays essentially half of the Syracuse game last week. I think it's going to be a good opportunity for you to roll this offensive line unit and be able to build some value in the guys that aren't taking the first snap of the game. Finally, the penalties were a huge improvement for SMU last week. You only get the 2 for 15. I've got them on here again. I say less than 7. What I really think in this scenario, I just think you have to beat Stanford. Stanford is going to be one of those teams that's pretty disciplined. Andrew Luck publicly roasted one of their defensive linemen for getting them a 15-yard unsportsmanlike penalty with a celebration as he was doing aura farming or whatever. But I just think this is going to be one of those, if SMU controls what they can, they don't beat themselves, and they hit all 3 of these goals, I think this is a comfortable win for SMU.
Yeah, I do as well. Should I go first? Do you want to go first? It's in the prediction world. We want to be at Mignon on Sunday. I mean, that's the goal. And Hayden and I are both going to pick SMU. I don't think that's a surprise. But the bigger problem we're going to have is on Sunday, when it's Victory Sunday, we're going to be picking out our free dessert at Mignon. When you mention on the Pony Express, you get free dessert at Mignon. So they're in Plano. It's easy to pop up there, whether you're in downtown or whether you're in, the Park Cities or whatever. It's really a quick trip up to Plano for an incredible meal. The brunch service is outstanding. The dinner service is outstanding. They do dinner 7 days a week. It is a great fine dining experience. And I tell you what, on Sunday, if SMU does get that win, you're going to want that free dessert. So head up to Mignon and Plano and see what former SMU offensive lineman Nick Nator and his family have been cooking up for decades, which is fine food, great atmosphere, and just a really good vibe over there in Plano. So we appreciate our friends at Mignon, and make sure you go ahead and make that reservation on Open Table. I'm going to go with SMU here. I usually kind of wait for you, but for this one, I'm going to go ahead and go first and just kind of knock this out. I think SMU finally kind of hits their stride offensively. I just kind of like what I've seen from Kevin Jennings. I thought last game, with all the changes on the offensive line, I think Rhett kind of called it a little differently from a time management perspective. I think this week, now that he's kind of seen what they have against an ACC opponent, I think they're going to try to really push the pace and give Clemson a lot to prepare for. And that's my opinion. I don't think they're going to necessarily be vanilla. I think this is going to be a fun game for SMU offensively, and one that the players, we're not in there. I think they're going to have a lot of fun preparing for this type of a game. I think SMU's offense puts up at least 40 points. I see this one 41. Give me 41. Give me 41-16. Like a bunch of field goals from Stanford. Maybe some weird score in there, but I think this is a pretty comfortable win. I think Vegas, according to BetMGM, had this at 18 or 19. I mean, it's a good size spread. The one for Syracuse ended up being pretty bang on, but this is a SMU team that, as we all know, has not covered the spread so far this year.
0-5, but you're picking them to cover. So I like it.
I'm going, and we talked about it before. I was like, I don't know how you can, but I don't know. I did not pick them to cover last week, so that makes me feel like if I'm picking them to cover this week, it's not out of like, oh, they're just that much better. Like, and I do think SMU is that much better than Stanford. Like, this is a game that SMU should. I mean, and remember, this is 9 a.m. Stanford time. This is not fun for the Cardinal.
God, that's I wish I had remembered that for my prediction. Because, look, I think Andrew Luck taking over this program is probably one of the best things that they could have done from a university standpoint. You get a guy that just absolutely loves Stanford football, a guy that's been around. His dad, has a lot of experience managing leagues, programs where he can do this. But they might not be able to reap some of the benefits of that yet. But I think they're definitely sowing for the future. I think Stanford creates an interesting matchup for SMU just due to where they're at on the schedule, if anything else. It's really easy to overlook Stanford for the Orange Paw next week. So I think people also overlook the fact that Stanford, who was worse last year than they are this year, upset a 10-win Syracuse team in September of last year. There's no easy ones in this conference, and a pro-style offense I think is going to look a little bit different than some of the up-tempo, high-speed offenses that we've seen so far this season. But I think SMU just athletically is going to be able to run away with this game. I think teams take the mentality of their leaders, and Andrew Luck and Frank Reich are going to do pretty much anything they can to keep this game close. I actually have SMU not covering the spread. I've got Mustangs 35, Cardinals 17.
I mean, it's a good bet not to. I mean, like, why would you? A lot of people have probably made a lot of money at this point if they've felt like SMU will just not cover until they do. So we will see. This is gonna be an interesting one. So look, NHL's back. This is the perfect time of year. Got a lot of good things going on. SMU just needs a win, though. They need to move on to 2-0. We'll be there to cover it all for you guys at ontheponyexpress.com. Make sure you guys reach out to all of our sponsors. We really appreciate them supporting us, allowing us to do this. And, of course, Hayden Howerton putting together the goods all week for you guys on the pod. Make sure you check out all of our preview content as well around the game. It is we've got a game preview. We've got Hayden's What I'm Looking For, Friday 5 from Kevin Longquist. and all the things. So make sure you guys check it all out at ontheponyexpress.com. And if you're interested in becoming a sponsor, we're interested in expanding the show. So reach out to us as well, either in the comments. You can ask for my email, or you can just email me, billy.embody@on3.com. So we appreciate all you guys who support us. Hope you guys enjoy this weekend. Hayden, 10 years, man. Congratulations on the state title. I'm sure that'll be a great time in Houston. Enjoy it. Safe travels down. And for everybody out there, we appreciate you guys listening to us. And do you got anything else?
Man, just love that Mustang football's back. It feels good coming off a win in the ACC, and I'm hoping that the momentum keeps up before what's going to be. We're going to have a huge guest next week for you guys for the Clemson prep. But before we get to that, got to get through Stanford. Got to end up at 2-0 in the ACC going into that one.
Yeah, we don't need to have SMU side of things, start to fall apart again too, heading into that one. Clemson's doing enough of that. So with that, Hayden Howerton, thank you, buddy. And thank you guys all for listening to us at the On the Pony Express podcast. We'll catch you guys next time. And thanks for listening, and have a great weekend, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the On the Pony Express podcast with Billy Embody. Follow us on your socials on X at SMU On3 and on Instagram at On3SMU. And keep it locked to OnThePonyExpress.com for more coverage.